Greetings, Indie Warriors, and welcome to I Dream of Indie. Are you ready for some devil hunting action? Today we are looking at HunterX on the Nintendo Switch. This is an action Metroidvania that comes from developer and publisher Orange Popcorn. HunterX is a game that very much favors action over storyline, but you do get an initial setup which involves lead character Suki on a quest to hunt devils. Guided by a mythical spirit, Suki will now find herself exploring a quite large map, taking down hordes of different enemies on her quest to find the ultimate devil demon thingy and slay it. HunterX doesn't feature all that many accessibility options. You can change the language and you can change the camera shaking. Outside of that, you'll be able to adjust the sound, master volume, etc., but that's really it. With the focus being more on the gameplay for HunterX, you would hope that it feels great, and thankfully it does. You have a sensitive jump button here, so if you hold it down harder, you'll jump a little bit higher. You eventually will get a dash and other fun abilities. You have your standard attack and some special attacks too. Suki has a health bar along with a stamina bar and an MP gauge. The stamina gauge will drop as you use your dash, so you'll want to keep your eye on that. Your health, of course, will drop as you take damage from enemies, which hopefully you won't be doing much of, but you probably will. And then you can use your mortal blows by keeping an eye on your MP. All of the different enemies that you come across offer up unique patterns. You're going to be doing a lot of sliding under them or dashing around them or blocking. There is a dedicated block button in this game, and there's a parry system, which, no surprise, I was terrible at. It's all about timing, and I suck at that. I really like the combat in this game. It's simplistic, but deep enough for someone like me anyways, to mess around with different spells and such. It is a difficult game though, so be prepared for that. Luckily, there are two difficulty options, easy and normal. Normal will be more like a hard in my opinion, and easy felt more like a normal, with most of the challenge coming from the bosses in this title. Now, the map here for a Metroidvania is solid. It does a good job of labeling items you've missed, like treasures or potions, and even the bosses will be labeled once you've reached them. So while there is an open-ended nature to this title, I think that it's well designed. Getting around the map is also helped by a teleport system. You will eventually find mirrors that you can walk through in order to go back to areas that you've already explored. Super helpful. While I did do my fair share of wandering, as I tend to do in Metroidvania titles, at least I always had a decent idea of where to go. It was more missing certain items that kind of halted my progress. One of these items was attached to my skill tree, and what I mean by that is you needed this item in order to advance up the skill tree and unlock more abilities, which I think is kind of a strange decision, but at any rate, that was pretty frustrating because I felt like I was getting far into the game and yet I couldn't do my skill upgrade, so I ended up having to backtrack, and I just missed one little corner of the map that I didn't even notice, only to find that the item I needed was right there all the time. And as I mentioned, the difficulty of this game, the bosses in particular. Man, I got to this werewolf creature and things were going well up to that point. All of a sudden he throws a 3-hit combo at me. I can't move, block, or do anything, and my whole life bar is gone. Come on. Still, I eventually persevered and I was able to forgive some of the game's shortcomings because at the end of the day, it's just really solid for a Metroidvania game. It gets the job done in almost every category and it doesn't do anything egregiously wrong. Is HunterX a game that reinvents the wheel, a must-play? No, it's not, but if you want to burn 10 or so hours on a pretty solid Metroidvania experience, you could do a lot worse. Outside of the sound gameplay, I think another element that kept me hooked to HunterX was the visual presentation of the game. It almost has a Castlevania feel with an anime aesthetic. I really like the dark, dreary streets that you'll come across. There's good variety to different areas of the map, and there's a lot of nice colors and lighting throughout. It's not quite as pretty as its PC counterpart on the Switch, but it's a pretty solid port that ran decently enough in handheld and docked. I only really ran into a couple slowdowns here or there, but the frame rate was generally fairly good for a Switch title. These aren't the most inspired looking creatures that you'll see, but you do get some okay looking bosses, ogres with spikes for example, and then other enemies that are almost zombie-like. Not a lot of originality to them, but for a smaller indie project, I thought the game looked pretty good. This is helped by some very good sound design. I really like the soundtrack of this title. It relies on a lot of heavier distorted guitars, but mixes it with orchestration for a nice effect. Some really nice melodies scattered throughout, and I enjoyed as you go through different areas, you are greeted to a new, well-made track. Even some pounding electronic drums in some of these. Sound effects are satisfying too, though nothing you haven't heard in other games before. Certainly acceptable with all of the slashing that you would expect. No real voice acting to speak of in this one, but not needed because there really isn't all that much for story. So to recap, HunterX, a pretty sound Metroidvania title. I enjoyed the graphical style of the game, I think it sounds great, but more importantly than all of that, it plays really well. The lack of story may be off-putting for some, and it doesn't exactly rewrite the book in terms of gameplay, but it does everything well enough where I can definitely recommend this for fans of the Metroidvania genre. Thank you so much for supporting clickbait-free content here at I Dream of Indie. We would now like to take a moment to shout out our brave indie warriors and legends that help to support this channel through channel memberships. At the Indie Warriors tier, we have Bill, Adriana Amato, CJR, Julian Kolbus, Jesse, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Hart, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, Christian Cruz, PSC, Solaru C, and Chic Geek. At the Indie Legends tier, we have Nathan Moore, Skeptism, Mitchell Hall, Jen Rose, Chris Jackson, Mr. W, Blue Francis 14, The Beefarinis, Business Cody, Chiron, Jace Glover, King of the Hatch, Ophidian Mind, Lord Metroid, C. Coyle, and Larkison. Thank you so much for all that you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Everybody else, head down to the description box below. Let's defeat the gaming echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.